East African history. The Abushiri Uprising 1888–1890. The Abushiri Uprising 1888–1890. This was the earliest resistance against German rule in Tanganyika. It took place on the Tanzania coast between 1888–1890. It was basically a revolt of the coastal slave traders, and it included some Africans and Swahili traders. The Abushiri uprisings were divided into two. The one in the northern coastal area around Pangani was led by Abushiri. The one in the south near Dar es Salaam and Kawa was led by Bwanaheri. Causes of the Abushiri Uprising. The rebellion was intended to keep the coast independent and free from German domination. Coastal traders and Swahili were protecting their economic power, i.e. the German East Africa Company had abolished slave trade, which was the major trade item of the Arabs. The coastal people were also angered by the Germans, who had taken over the collecting of mainland import duties or taxes. The coastal people were also protesting against the loss of their property. Jiko had started confiscating Arab houses to be used as bases for German administration. The Jiko had started issuing economic restrictions on ownership of land and property, which the Arab traders challenged. The Germans did not respect the cultures and traditions of the coastal people, mainly because the Germans were Christians and Arabs were Muslims. The coastal people were also angered by German attempts to alienate their land. E.g., in 1888, they came up with a new land regulation which required people to have proof of land ownership. The Germans demanded heavy taxes from the traders and the local people, e.g., poll tax, hut tax, and inheritance tax on top of brutally collecting the taxes. The Germans had recruited the Akedas and Jums in their administration, who were mistreating the Arab traders, yet they were related to the coastal Arabs. Presence of able leadership by Abushiri in Pangani, Bwanaheri in Uzigu, and Matoro in Lindi also led to the outbreak of the revolts. The local rulers were being humiliated and harassed by the Germans, who flogged them in. East African history. The Abushiri Uprising 1888–1890. The rise of nationalistic feelings also led to the outbreak of revolts. There was a desire to regain their independence that had been eroded. The Arabs had participated in the Indian Ocean trade for so long and had gathered weapons, e.g., guns, which forced them to engage the Germans in war. The Germans disrespected the coastal Arabs, e.g., they drank and slept with people's wives, and even entered mosques with their dogs, which annoyed the Muslims. The course of Abushiri rebellion. It started on 18th August 1888 in Pangani, where Jiko had established an administrative post. It was led by Abushiri ibn Salim al-Harthi, a prominent Arab trader and sugarcane planter in Pangani. It started when Abushiri refused to raise/hoist the German flag and even refused to listen to the German instructions, and his people started rioting against the Germans. Rebellion abruptly and spontaneously spread to other areas, e.g., Tangay, Kawa, Mikandini and Kawa. Some Bantu communities, e.g., the Bunda and Zingu, also joined the rebellion. Bwanaheri, a Swahili chief in Uzigu, and other coastal Arabs joined the revolt. The Germans were caught unaware and suffered heavy losses. Jiko officials were beaten and driven out of all coastal towns except Dar es Salaam. The Abushiri rebels surrounded them and captured them. The Germans called for assistance from home, and by May 1889 reinforcement had arrived under Major von Wissmann. He commanded a large army of 600 Nubian Sudanese, 50 Somalis, 350 Zulus and 20 Turkish troops. Within 2 months, Wissmann had captured Pangani and Dar es Salaam. Many Arabs who had supported Abushiri opted to make peace with the Germans. Smelling defeat, Abushiri retreated into the interior and hired 500 Maviti fighters in Ngoni warriors. They used the Ngoni tactics of warfare but did not save the situation because they were only interested in looting. East African history. The Abushiri Uprising 1888–1890. He was later betrayed by a Jum called Magay of Usagara. He was captured and killed at Bagamoyo. By 1890, von Wissmann had moved to the south and captured all coastal towns, e.g., Kula and Lindi. In April 1890, Bwanaheri also submitted to the Germans, and this marked the end of the rebellion. Problems faced by Abushiri during the resistance against the Germans. He had never been a military man, and so were many of his followers who lacked military training. It was poorly organized since the fighters lacked serious military strategies and thorough preparation. Abushiri's weapons were inferior, e.g., old-fashioned guns, bows, arrows and short stabbing spears, which couldn't match the guns of the Germans. Germans had recruited a large force reinforced by Nubians, Sudanese, Somalis and Zulu and Turkish troops. The 500 Maviti mercenaries recruited by Abushiri lacked interest in war, and instead of fighting, they were just looting from the Germans. Some coastal tribes easily gave in to the Germans, e.g., Magay of Usagara even gave the Germans information about Abushiri. The rebellion wasn't well coordinated and lacked a united command, e.g., Abushiri-led forces Impengani Biwanahari in Yuzigyo and Maturo and Kulwa. The revolt lacked a national outlook, i.e., the indigenous people blacks did not join the revolt because it was entirely an Arab revolt. Abushiri employed poor methods of fighting, e.g., they used open warfare, which put him and his troops at a disadvantage. The Germans also used cruel methods to suppress the rebellion, e.g., the scorched earth policy, hanging the captured rioters and shooting at first sight, which greatly scared the rebels. Abushiri was forced into the interior where he lacked an Arab following, e.g., he was cut off from the supply of guns and ammunition while in the interior. The Germans were determined to crush the rebellion because they wanted to colonize East African history. The Abushiri Uprising 1888-1890. Famine also weakened the Abushiri rebels, e.g., many of the Biwanahari fighters surrendered due to starvation. Effects of the rebellion. There was heavy loss of lives, like Abushiri was killed during the rebellion. There was heavy destruction of property, e.g., buildings were demolished. Abushiri was defeated, which marked the end of his independence and that of the coastal Arabs. There was deliberate spread of cattle diseases like rinderpest by the Germans. The Germans used a scorched earth policy, which led to outbreak of famine. The Germans were forced to change their government, e.g., they brought in traditional rulers to replace their kiddas and jumpers at the coast. The Germans also realized the weaknesses of Jiko, hence the colonial government took over immediately. Abushiri's defeat opened up East Africa for colonization, e.g., many European settlers started coming to Tanganyika. After the defeat of Abushiri, peace returned to the coastal towns after a long time of political turmoil, upheaval/chaos. The rebellion taught the people of northern Tanganyika not to bother resisting the Germans. Again, the Germans were forced to work with the Arabs and Africans at the coast, e.g., they trained